Hey y'all, it's Wendy
Hello.
here. Hi Trey. Um, I've got someone super cool here with me today. I've got Trace Trellert. So it is Wendy here from Raise the Vibe Initiative. Trace is such Chase is such a cool guy. He's actually a sound healing practitioner, and he is the owner of the Medicine of Sound. He's just a super cool guy, and I just wanted to bring out a little bit of kind of what he does, and he's so unique. And I caught him one day on one of his lives. He's so talented, and he just really caught my attention. So I've met with him and just had an opportunity to chat, and he's wonderful. Um, so Chase, thank you so much for being part of Raise the Vibe Initiative and in this co-creative space. I really, really am grateful to have you here. And maybe you could say hello to some of the guests and maybe just tell us a little bit about what is sound healing and what is the medicine of sound.
Thank you so much for having me. I thought you were saying hey y'all to me. So I'm y'all in this situation. So funny. So sound healing, the way that I like to describe it is any music that you feel for yourself is healing. It really is. So, I'm sure been a lot of studies to do with classical music, and you can apply that to your life in a way where, it's creating a therapeutic space for you to work in or to introspect in, meditate with. Now, those are all particular instruments where they're creating soundscapes that are, artistically combined with a bunch of instruments. What we're doing in sound healing is we're taking instruments that have a long reverberation note. So if you take a crystal bowl, if you hit one note, it goes for, 30 seconds to a minute, depending on the type of bowl. Whereas if you're, using any orchestral instrument, generally, one of the longer ones, I'm not really sure, but maybe something like a piano, right? One hit is gonna basically reverberate for not nearly as long. There's something about the length of the reverberation of these instruments that really creates a state of relaxation. It's kind of like we're orchestrating a very long thing, which would be like, let's say, if you're taking an orchestral sonata that is an hour. What we're doing is we're bringing that down to like a very, very small chunk of that, but stretching it out over an hour. So if you could imagine, the slower that the whole orchestra is playing, the more relaxing it's going to be. Kind of like when we change the tonality of our voice, we bring you into a more relaxed state when we speak slower. The instruments going slower brings us just more introspective and works really well for meditation, but also for activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which, you know, as long as you're laying on the ground during a sound bath and you're receiving the instruments and these long notes, you're going to be receiving the healing. It's pretty much guaranteed. There are very few people that will leave the sessions not really understanding what's going on or not really understanding that this was beneficial for them. So, Medicine of Sound is my business where I basically have trainings where I teach people how to do this and how to turn it into a business, how to play different instruments. I also sell instruments. I sell my own creation of a crystal bowl, which was made about 6 months ago. So I've been working with that lots. I also facilitate my own sound bath still as well. I facilitate ceremonies where we guide people through many different experiences to create an entire evening, which hybridizes a few different things, and we could go into that. But that's the majority of what Medicine of Sound is about.
Well, that sounds super cool. So basically, you're saying the parasympathetic nervous system, because I'd imagine that most of us are pretty out of whack for the most part, right? So if you're able to kind of use these frequencies and tones and they kind of last a little bit longer, it can help balance that a little bit.
Yeah, well, essentially, it's going to be up to the individual. So, with all healing, it really comes down to where you're coming from, how you're addressing yourself in the session. So, one of the things that we work with in all healing, essentially, is going to be what is your intention before we engage in this process? And when you're engaging in a process with something like sounds, if you're just laying on the ground without sounds for an hour, if you don't feel more relaxed than when you started, right? It's like, well, there's something else going on there, right? Like if we are consuming substances and or overworking ourselves to the point of burnout, there's a lot of different things that can be addressed. Sound is just one thing that I found pretty much applies to everyone, and you don't also have to tell someone what to do. Whereas when we're working with beliefs, we need to kind of go dive in a bit deeper. So the parasympathetic nervous system, from my perspective, is just essentially getting to a relaxed state, which these instruments do by virtue of them being very slowly kind of played and reverberate for long times.
Okay, so you also had mentioned, I want to sort of talk about intentional, building something out with intention. But I think first, what I'd like to mention is meditation. You'd mentioned that it can aid you in meditation. So, how does one maybe work with, sound baths while they're trying to kind of work in their meditation process? How can it help?
Well, the best thing for any form of healing is what you're doing before the session and what you're doing after as well, right? So the more we meditate before the session, the more we can get out of the session itself. So if your intention really is to deepen meditation practice in this space, if you're just doing that and you have no practices going into it, you really have no evidence if it worked or not. That's one of the most important things of the lead up and the post experience is that you're literally seeing with evidence that, wow, this benefited me because I was in, and this is the thing, I was in a space where we all had the same intention to better ourselves in some way. That's one of the most powerful pieces. If you're going and there's not a room and it's just a one-on-one experience with me, it will still be something that's tangible just based on your intention and my own, which is that we are going to help you discover what is in the way of you deepening your practice, which essentially I don't even think you'd need to be doing any introspection. It would just automatically help by virtue of this being a focused intention that this is what I'm doing. I've practiced before. I am going to see how it affects me after. And these sounds are, you know, just relaxing. They just are like it's kind of like hard to quantify it, but it will just help with the intent, but also the fact that the notes last so long.
Well, I loved it. When I saw you playing, I was like, oh, I just stopped. I'm like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
here for a while, you're very it's very beautiful when you play. So, obviously this is a little bit of a different alternative kind of thing to do. So I'm curious, like what led you to this path? Like, I had mentioned, I think we talked a little bit before, said like, were you born this way or how did you get
No, not born this way. Born the opposite way, certainly. But like the long story short is this is where like the inception point happened for me is that I was in Australia and I was living in a very touristy area. So they had a lot of different acts that would come through. One of them was this guy and he was playing the didgeridoo, and I thought it was really, really cool. So I asked the person that was beside me. There was maybe like 100 people crowding, and he was doing different like animal tones and really playing kind of for the kids. But I asked the person, I was like, how do you even play this thing? Like, what is it? And he's like, oh, mate, you got to be able to breathe through your nose and breathe out your mouth at the same time. And I was like, I can't do that. But then I Googled it after and I was like, oh, okay, there's a technique called circular breathing. So when I went home, this was maybe 8 months after, first thing that I did, bought a didgeridoo, learned how to play it, maybe took about 2 weeks. And I started going into altered states. There were not altered states where I was having visions or anything, but highly altered states from doing essentially like a breath controlled practice for so long. So this was a combination where when you're playing the didge or playing the flute, you're doing breath work and sound healing on yourself at the same time. So the first experience was with that. And then it just kind of developed into, well, I only have one hand being taken up when I'm playing the didge. Maybe I can play a different instrument at the same time. So it was like, well, there's a bowl and you just ding the bowl. So bought some bowls from India, explored that, had no idea what I was doing, but just bought them. And then I was like, this is awesome. I think people would enjoy this. So then started holding meditations from my parents' store, and I wasn't calling it a sound bath at the time because I didn't even know what that was. It was a meditation where I'm playing the didge. Part of it would be in silence. Then from there, just continued to add, right? Like I had someone come by and they said, "Hey, did you know about gongs?" And I just didn't know about gongs. And they started to explain to me how they work and how it would fit well with the things that I'm currently doing. Then from there, it was like, okay, this instrument and this instrument and this. And there's a lot of different instruments that do a very similar thing that will create a similar vibe, but they all have their own essence. And for me, I love every essence of every instrument. Literally, if it's from a bundle of leaves to the most complicated instrument that you can buy, like they're all have their own vibe that they can create. And I've just been on a tear of just loving them all. That's okay. I've just been on a tear of loving them all since then, which was I don't even know how long ago, maybe like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow, it's such an interesting path. And I've been kind of getting more into it a little bit myself. Like I've been seeing a couple of people coming on and doing the sound baths, and I really enjoy it. And it's interesting just to kind of see your path. Like you're quite brilliant. So like I don't know, you vibrate at a pretty high level. So for you, it just sounds really normal. But for most people, like, yeah, that seems like maybe a lot. But for some people, like if they just wanted to take a step to just get started, or maybe they're interested in trying something new, what would you recommend that they can try?
Well, it's interesting because where I started from was the didgeridoo, which now that I see it, as far as sound healing instruments are concerned, probably one of the more complicated instruments. Because from that point, I learned the gong and crystal bowl, and everything from that point forward was like downhill, and it was much easier. And then I started to play the guitar, which is much harder. But if someone's starting, you start with the what I'd call the traditional instruments, which is a crystal bowl or a gong. And those ones, basically, any sound bath practitioner is going to be specializing in one or the other. And it seems, if you look up Google and what is searched more, crystal bowls are much more popular as far as the tonality that it creates and probably the soundscape. They are also handheld, so very, very convenient for one person to play. I would suggest starting with a crystal bowl. And if you just put it down and just ding it and close your eyes, right? You can be doing sound healing on yourself. One of my goals of this next decade is to get a sound bowl into every house because it will greatly benefit, a single person's practice, or you could put that bowl on your partner or your child if they're stressed or anything just to bring about one note that you can listen to, and as it fades, listening for the silence. That is a practice that has been done monasteries and stuff for I don't even know, probably close to 1,000 years. I'm not sure how old the first Himalayan bowls are, but I've got some from the 1600s, so I'm sure well before then. But yeah, it's a very beautiful practice to just hit that and listen to it, and before sleeping will benefit you. If you're feeling stressed, all those kinds of things. So I would start there. But if you want to basically be starting this as a profession, or you want to integrate this into your healing, if you're like a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, Reiki, you might want to get a few bowls or a set of like 7 and start there and then add to your set from there. But yeah.
So, did you mention that you're starting a course, or is that in the works yet, or no?
Oh no, I have a course. So the courses that I have right now, I have on Meditative Sound Academy, where I have a ton of courses. You'd have to click to see what's inside. I have a video that kind of explains that. But yeah, I have a whole sound healing course where I break down all of the instruments that are typically used, and then I teach people how to turn it into a business as well, so that they can understand the nuances of how to do it. And there's other courses in that same thing. But yeah, no, I've had my courses out for like that course in particular about sound healing for about 3.5 years, and I think I've got maybe like 7,000 students or something like that. So lots of people. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, good for you. Well, I
Thank
think
you.
it's super interesting. It's nice to be able to see some of these new modalities coming out and having the ability for people to learn more about them, rather than sort of the traditional way that maybe we have done things in the past. I think there's a lot of people that are gaining more interest in some of these things that I mean, I think it is somewhat alternative, right? But there's obviously a huge need for these things, and people are really, finding a lot of joy in them. You had mentioned as well the crystal bowls that you have your own crystal bowls. So can people go to the website and purchase one if they're interested?
Yes, I actually just secured the domain magneticbowls.com. So that redirects to my site where you can find the new bowls that I have, which are basically a hybrid of a crystal bowl, but it's on a magnet with plates. I can just walk over real quick and grab one so you can get an idea. But these make it actually even more convenient for first time players to be able to play the bowl. The reason is you know, the way that a typical bowl is played requires just a little bit of nuance of understanding. Whereas this bowl literally requires none if you just give it a ding. So if you look at this, we've got it on a steel plate with magnets, which a traditional bowl does not have this at all. It's just a bowl, right? So yeah, just to be able to play it and stuff is much easier. Whether you're playing it like this or if you're playing it just flat down on a counter. Also, the plate makes it so it's handheld, which most bowls would stop reverberating at that point. You can place it on your chest and give it a ding too. Obviously, you'd be laying down if you're doing that, but there's a ton of perks which you'd be able to see on my site of how that makes it better. But yeah.
I mean, you could obviously probably do even clearing your energy every day with that, right? Like, and
That's the intention. Yeah, is that you just would sit here, right? I'm on a counter and just give it a ding and just close your eyes and just feel, right? So it's the sound most available self sound healing instrument around, like this bowl, right? Because you just give it one hit and you can get into it.
I'm gonna have to buy one. I love that.
Cool. Cool, cool.
You're such a smart guy, boy. I mean, for a young man, like, I mean, boy, you've certainly done a lot of things. So
Well, you thought I was younger than I was though. Remember how old did you think I was?
well, I thought you were like in your 20s. I know you're actually older than I had thought you were. I say we're a little bit lucky because we look a little younger maybe sometimes than what
Yeah, yeah.
is, right?
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that for people that are on this. I'm 35. So yeah, like the entrepreneurial spirit only got ignited in me from basically age of 30. And this might sound very bizarre. I was like, why do you think the entrepreneurial spirit kicked in? Well, I started drinking coffee. I hadn't drank coffee until that point. And I was like, I have so many ideas. And for those of you that don't know, if you have ADHD, coffee is actually generally going to be hit or miss, but more on the side of being very good for you, which it balances out the brain, clears things up, and helps us to concentrate.
Is that right, eh? I didn't know that. Okay,
I
well,
didn't either till I started drinking it, and then 2 years in, I was like, "Why is coffee so good for me? I should look this up." And it was like, "Oh, that's why." Whereas it doesn't have that same effect for everybody. But I had very low dopamine because of my childhood. I was a very very sick kid, but also because I had IBS for also around a decade, and that is where all of the good feeling neurochemicals come from. So I was very low on those for my whole life, pretty much.
I continuously learn from you every time I'm talking with you. Very nice.
Well, thanks. Cool.
Have you again sometime. Okay, so just thank you so much for sharing all that information. That's really cool. If people want to get in touch with you, or what are the services that you're offering, and how do people get in contact with you if they'd like to?
A lot of different services, but mainly if you're interested in attending a sound bath, you could basically go to medicineofsound.com and get on the mailing list. The majority of the things that I do offer, I send out emails maybe twice per month. So it's probably the best. And then on Instagram, it would be at Medicine of Sound, all lowercase. Um, is that all that you're asking?
And services, like, what, because you had mentioned people can do one-on-one sessions with you or.
Yeah, one-on-ones, groups. I've got cacao ceremonies where we guide like a whole evening, maybe like around 5, 6 hours or so. Yeah, you could hop on a call and you could pick out a crystal bowl too. But yeah, so all of the services that I do offer, they're not typically booked on my site. I usually send in email out letting people know what's coming up. So that would be the best to find out if you were curious. But yeah, just generally group sound baths, which I think I'm going to be holding one from Zen Energy Lounge. So that kind of thing. Yeah.
An energy lounge.
Or wait, what was it? What was it called again? Sorry, I forgot. The place that you just were.
Oh, the Wisdom Tea Lounge.
Wisdom Tea Lounge. Sorry, I thought it was Zen Energy. I don't know why.
Oh, cool. Okay, I didn't know that you were going to have one there. Well, I'll be there for sure.
Awesome,
It's
awesome, awesome.
like 5 minutes from my house, so yeah. Oh, that's super fun. I'm excited about that. When is that?
She just contacted me on Monday and we had met in the summer. So probably a plan around a month and a half from now so we can get a crew of people. Yeah.
Good. Well, it'll be amazing to meet you in person. It was interesting because a lot of the people that I end up having on the show, they come from different people, but I just one day I'm just like cruising along and I'm like, whoa, who's this guy, right? And I just was like, oh, I really like him, and so it was so nice that I was actually able to connect with you, and I really appreciate you, coming on and telling us a little bit about your expertise and what you're doing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I wish you obviously the best, and I'm happy that I'm able to kind of get some information and some of the work that you're doing out there, to people. You are also you're in Port Coquitlam, Vancouver,
Or Coquitlam. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my studio, if we want to just get it on camera, even though I wasn't planning on showing it, is right here. So if you came and did a sound bath, you'd be in this like super lovely sound temple, which is what my goal is to make an actual temple someday. But yeah, we'll for now it's what it is.
You've done a lovely job. It looks really nice.
Well, thank you.
Is it one day, sweetheart? Is there Well, actually, I think you were gonna maybe just, as we end this, just to maybe put out a good vibe for everybody, right?
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll go over to my bowls now, and yeah, let's put an intention right now to send some good vibes out to every single person that's watching this, but not just them, to every single person across the entire planet, and send these good vibes out there. So here we go. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Wendy, for having me on the show, and sending you guys all lots of love.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chase. Sending you lots of love, everybody lots of love. Peace. Namaste.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Chase. Bye-bye.
Bye.